Carl and Lou here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short, and it's the Nasties. Really near the end now, and we're touching upon what might be one of my favourites to date. This is Expose, also known as House on Straw Hill, and Trauma. One of the more infamous Nasties to appear on the DPP list. Infamous because of this. Features a ton of sexual content, as well as violence. This is a movie that is part psychological horror, part thriller, but super exploitative, and certainly can also fall into the art house camp. It was a fascinating watch where immediately, thanks to recognising lead actor Udo Kier, being like, sweet, this is interesting, this guy's great in a lot of what he does, excited for that. Weirdly enough, we would suddenly hit a run where Udo Kier popped up again later on in another Nasty we watched shortly afterwards, but seeing him in this, quite young, quite excited. But immediately, you know, the story laid itself out. It was very mysterious all the way through, really intriguing and super sexual. It's what we'd call it, erotic. That's a major part of it. Whether that's your jam or not is up to you. I think it fits in the story.
Definitely.
So I didn't find it like annoying or weird or just sex for the sake of sex. It fit in the story of what's being told here. So I'm a big fan of this one. I think it's a good film. Not forget nasty part. I think it's a good film.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because there's actual story to it. A lot of these nasties you watch, it's just a really really skeleton kind of story. This often, had a story. It was cheesy and like
it was cheesy.
There's a level of cheese to it. Udo Kier is just fascinating to watch.
He's a weirdly enough, right? So this is unfortunate. He is dubbed in this, something he wasn't particularly happy about himself. So ultimately, you're not getting his voice, but what you are getting is his face, and his facial expressions and mannerisms, and that man can act.
It goes for it, doesn't it? It's just entertaining to watch.
He is. This is not his best role in the nasty list, because we'll get to that one in another video. But this is still highly entertaining. Written and directed by James Kenelum Clark. And the cast is quite small because it mostly takes place amongst a small group of people in a small location. So I'll pull out the three major characters, which is Udo Kier as Paul Martin. I love that, Paul Martin. I mean, he don't even look like a Paul Martin, let alone such an English name.
If you had two names in front of you, Udo Kier and Paul Martin, you go, well, clearly that's a name for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Linda Hayden as Linda Hinstadt and Fiona Richmond as Suzanne. So yeah, there's not a lot of like detail in regards to like why this got into so much trouble. It's more of an obvious sort of, all right, there's a fair amount of sex. A lot of that would have been wanting to be trimmed out and stuff like that. Probably the most notable thing is the rape that occurs in the field. Particularly as that sort of takes on a whole, is she enjoying it aspect more than anything else. And that, I think, would have been big time problematic. But also masturbation, female masturbation is heavy in this.
Can't have a woman enjoying herself.
But just think about like that time. The time and stuff like that. It would have been the same if it was a dude.
Of course.
It's not that specific to women, but rarely do you kind of get that aspect in these films. Ultimately, horror, thriller, psychological, all of that always kind of led towards women naked and men naked, that kind of thing. So Udo Kier plays Paul Martin, who is a novelist, basically, who's under heavy pressure to produce his new book from his publishers. He's stressed out, he's, uncomfortable, he wants to be left alone to do it, and all those elements, all that sort of struggling artist thing you see all the time in horror and other general movies.
I mean, it does make sense, like, you've got to be creative on demand. Like, with painters, like some of the classics and stuff, they probably take months and years to paint them.
We watched a fantastic, what was it called? Oh my god, the New York one, Drillcolor. An artist there who's under massive amount of pressure to reproduce what was successful work, and what drives him mad as well.
That's why Stephen King's fascinating with writing about writers, because it's what he is.
Writers write about writers, absolutely. So Paul's idea is rent out a quiet cottage in the British countryside where basically he can just relax, but he often spends more time banging his girlfriend Suzanne, which is Fiona Richmond. So that's kind of how we're introduced to both of them, where he's got this kind of cottage. It's a nice looking location. It feels very English countryside. The sort of wandering lanes, the small train station, the cottage up on the hill with meadows nearby. It's very peaceful and relaxed on that. The cottage itself looks old, but not like out of time old.
It was good. It was a good location for that, definitely.
But yeah, so when he's not, because like he's basically not really working in his book, and they're into some kinky shit, because we're kind of introduced to them in her first sort of sexual triast, and we're like, why is he putting on rubber gloves?
Yeah.
Like, and they still, to be fair, never really explained that aspect of it. Because you're like, is he a clean freak or that? They never really explain that.
No, it's just part of it.
It's just part of the jam, basically. Yeah. But in between that, he's stressing about his book. But he's having reoccurring nightmares of some form of murder or something like that. So severe that it basically paralyses him. It's basically like he's got a demon on his chest, that whole thing. PTSD, sleep paralysis. Yeah. PTSD over this situation. So immediately, these are all our plot elements being dropped in to make you go, okay, what's going on here? But all of this does get too much for Paul, and this is the start of the movie, first 15-20 minutes, and it can be a bit confusing, because him and Suzanne don't exactly share much in the way of dialogue with each other.
No, you just know that, okay, it's like his part-time chick.
That's what it feels like, because she's quite glamorous.
Yeah.
She is, like, she's quite glamorous.
I think she's a bit too made over, but yeah, I think it's a good impression that she is that kind of lifestyle.
Absolutely. But basically, so he can focus on his book, and knowing he needs to get it done, he sends Suzanne away, ends up hiring a secretary / typist, and this is Linda, played by Linda Hayden. So this is Linda, she's a young woman, that kind of thing, and she's going to come and basically do all his jobs for him, and basically take over the typing part, because that's where he's struggling. He can't quite get the words out on print as they are in his head. Yeah. So his plan and thinking is, I'll speak them, she types. Yeah. It's completely sensible. It really is. Dictation, basically. It seems like a smart setup and allows Paul to actually realise his vision, because when he's just talking, she's typing. She's a fast typer as well. That you can kind of see him getting into the flow of it. You can kind of see him going, and where he changes a word, he's like, no, this and that, whatever. Yeah. It works. It's a good back and forth.
They work well together.
But immediately, Linda, you kind of know something's a little off.
Yeah.
She arrives with a confidence and assuredness that puts him on the back foot, almost questioning some of his things when she's typing out the book and stuff like that.
Kind of like she's done some previous research.
Yeah, absolutely. We do actually see when she's unpacking a bag that she has his headshot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But you could argue, well, that's just because she got hired a job and she was like, well, let me look into who this dude is. And a headshot, you know?
Well, you kind of said that before Google, you might not know what people look like.
Absolutely. This is pre-internet.
You can't go, oh, that's what they look like. So you might have looked at it for security more than anything. It's the right person.
But perhaps the biggest thing for him is that she just doesn't seem that interested in him. She's very blasé about him. He seems to have this sort of thing that she should be wowed by him, and she just isn't. She's really good. She really plays this part really, really well. Yeah. And she's just like, I ain't that interested in you. She he says something and she'll be cutting to him, and he can't quite wrap his head around. He's used to women probably throwing themselves at him.
Yeah, I quite like that.
Yeah,
they wrote her as a more confident, more modern kind of woman, rather than just like, because again, the whole like cliche of a receptionist or a typist would be, oh, you just take your orders and yes, boss. Yeah,
so, it's exactly that. But as well, like, because of that frustration, he ends up trying to sexually, what's the word I'm looking for? Seduce her.
Yeah.
Seduce her.
Yeah.
But again, she's kind of having none of it as well, which confuses him even more. But this confusion turns into suspicion now, as he can't quite I don't know what. Maybe we're missing this part where connecting the dots, how it goes from, oh, she's having none of my shit, to who is this woman? Or why is she here?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like, there might be a couple of bits missing from that. The dots aren't quite connected, I think. But he does start to dig around, sort of like starts looking into her sort of, bags and things like that when she's out. I think he spies on her masturbating at one stage. Yeah. Which actually, I suppose that might be a bit reasonable, but like, that's a bit odd.
Yeah, he's not great. So that sounds like a great employer at the moment, is he?
Yeah, but he does dig around and it covers like the headshot and some of her secrets. And these secrets will end up hitting quite close to home. So spoilers, obviously, as the film goes on, what we revealed is that Paul never actually wrote his original book. He stole it. He stole the manuscript and passed it off as his own. Yep. Killing, these are the dreams, killing the man who had originally written it, which turned out to be Linda's husband. Yep. And she's here for revenge, to get one over on him. Now, the film doesn't do a great job. While it does a good job of that reveal and building nicely, it's mysterious and it's like a really like, oh yeah, that all makes sense now. What it doesn't do well is why she acts so odd leading up to it. And I mean odd from our perspective. Not saying the oddness towards Paul fine, but like, for example, when she comes to the train station, when she first arrives there, she gets sort of hassled, bothered by two men.
Yeah.
These two men would later end up chasing her down in a field and raping her. But when they come across her while she's masturbating in the field, and then they end up raping her, and that's that scene I talked about at the start. And that's just weird. It almost feels like, why is that there? How does that relate in any way other than she kills them? I'm not right. She murders them, right? She does murder them, but like, other than showing that she's got a dark side. But then I don't feel like that's a dark side. They're raping her.
It could again. You could put the masturbation like loneliness as well, like she's still got desires and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. But not publicly in a film necessarily, because you know, this fucking bedroom. Don't be like, that's okay. There's not no.
It is a public place.
It's a public place in the film. You've got a fucking bedroom in a house.
Yeah.
Where you're plenty of times as long as Paul goes out a fair bit as well. You know, but like. How that as well connects to the Linda thing is because Linda comes back, Suzanne comes back later on and ends up being another victim. Weird enough, while there isn't a huge body count, of course, the bodies that we do see, the kind of gore or violence we do see is quite intense.
Yeah.
Suzanne in particular gets it quite nasty, and when Paul finds her body and aspects like that. We do have some very long-winded scenes too. For example, the car breaks, one goes on too long, results in a crash.
Yeah.
Seems to take ages, and it seems to be just so Paul has to get back to the house, and we follow him along that way. And all of that sort of is where I think the film falls down and becomes quite exploitative. It's exploitation 101 almost to a degree. You've got violent murders, female nudity, heavy female nudity, and sex based around them, and the man being in a powerful position. You've got unnecessary rape scene. These are all exploitation 101, but it doesn't detract from the quality, I think. It is an excellent movie.
Yeah.
It's a thrilling story steeped in mystery.
I think you're always into a winner when you do have like a mystery in these kind of films as well, because it kind of keeps you focused to it rather than just we're going along. We're like, what's behind that?
Yep.
So I just find that kind of keeps you hooked a bit more.
We were interested. We were interested to see what the resolution was, to find out what the score with Linda was. It is an excellent movie packed with sex, violence, and horror, but I don't think we're expressing quite how much sex and violence is in this movie.
There is a lot.
There is a lot. It had over 3 minutes cut from its original cinematic release. Just, wait for this, to get an X rating.
Wow.
Just to get an X rating, you had to have over 3 minutes cut from it.
Okay, so yes,
that
pretty full
is incredible. Obviously, the uncut version would end up being banned completely. As times change, this has relaxed, but... And again, we come to this but. Finding a completely uncut version of this is still incredibly difficult. Most versions you will find in the UK have a whopping 51 seconds missing still.
Wow.
There is, though, apparently a suggested uncut version by Severin Films out and about. However, I've seen that that's debatable. I suspect that their uncut version of this film is lost to time. And that's the problem now. And similar to like Cannibal Holocaust, where they go completely uncut and they turn out to be 2 seconds missing.
Yeah.
Which is famously the case now. I think it's the same thing with this.
Yeah.
I think there's so many versions out there floating around with certain lengths that there's probably unlikely to be a definitive, this is actually the completely uncut, nothing is missing out there.
Yeah.
It's as, you probably want to getting closer and closer to it. And likely as this goes on, depending upon popularity of releases, we might eventually get there to the most minute part. But all that's being added will be added back is an extra second or two and a scene here.
Yeah.
That'll already be quite... Because the version we watch is the version that has 51 seconds cut.
Yeah.
And I'm still like, there was a fucking lot in there.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? What am I missing with 51 seconds?
Yeah.
What you're probably missing is length of a scene.
Yeah.
A static camera shot that holds on something. What we're used to in the Nasties, where here's a wound.
We'll hold on
Instead of cutting after 2 seconds, it stays for 5.
Yeah.
And it's elements like that. There really is no argument with the graphic content in this film. I'd put it up there as one of the most graphic that we've seen. Not the most graphic, but because you know what I think it is and why it stands out? It's because it's almost all predominantly sexual violence.
Yeah.
Almost all. While the deaths may not be sexually violent in that sense, it often comes about following sexual encounters or things like that. Put the two together and you have got two things that censors are going to go.
Like, right, that's it.
Absolutely. But I really also want to stress that this is a good movie because all of this stuff, as we said at the start, complements the story and most of it feels important. It's a story that builds to a shocking conclusion. Made more watchable by, and we come back to this, an excellent cast, who I think all believed in what they were doing. Now, I know, yes, there are now, I think in particular, Linda Hindstadt, in particular, doesn't have complimentary things to say about that. I always take that shit with a pinch of salt, you know, like, kind of like, I feel like you should be proud. I understand Udo Kier's issue with this. Yeah. You're dubbed. Yeah. You basically, as far as he's concerned, you might as well have removed me from the movie then. Yeah. But I also want to, like we said already, praise the fact that it was, for me, it's one of my most memorable Udo Kier performances without having his voice. Yeah. And that's incredible. Yeah. That is ultimately disappointing though. I would love to have... Do you think they did it because they wanted him to become across as an Englishman? Paul Martin, English dub, because obviously he would have had an accent. Yeah. What harm would have that done?
I don't think it
would have that done at all.
Yeah, you could have had it as like... Because he's so removed from anyone anyway. Like, a European author wants to come to England, English countryside, far away from everything. It still works. There's no real reason not to have anyone of any kind of heritage there. It's weird.
And it's nonsensical. And what makes it particularly nonsensical as well is Udo Kier doesn't look English. I know that's a weird thing to say, but he is a distinct looking man who looks distinctly European.
He's like a European count.
Yeah. Like from somewhere like Germany or so on. Many films will utilise that, including another Nasty, to perfection. Yeah. So it's so stupid. But I don't think, and this is really important, I don't think it detracts from the viewing experience, because I didn't know he was dubbed until after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't know...
Yep. That's how well it done it is. Yeah. How well it does. Yeah. Here's the thing. I think part of the reason why this film stands out so well for us and why we enjoy it so much is the Nasty List. It's a veritable mess of poor quality films. We've stressed that over this entire run of reviews. But that's why Exposé stands out. Because it's so much better. It's well directed, it's well shot, it's well acted. Yeah. It's got all the stuff from the sexual violence to the horror to the thriller to the mystery, all of this. Nearly 40 years after its initial UK release, it's still really entertaining and really memorable.
I quite like that the female character's a bit more independent as well, like Suzanne. Like, she just comes and goes. Like, I don't think Suzanne seems like...
He calls at the end of the movie and she just comes running. I debate that.
Fair enough.
He sends her away, she goes.
Yeah, Linda.
Well, Linda's the villain of the movie. I mean, well, she's the villain of the movie in the sense that she's after revenge and all that kind of thing. It's the I spit in the grave aspect, though, to a certain degree, where you have sympathy. But the problem is the movie doesn't do a great job of making us sympathetic because of some of the behaviours leading up to it. Ultimately, I don't think there's a character you're supposed to cheer for. Yeah. Because you're not cheering for Udo Kier, because ultimately, throughout the movie, Paul Martin...
He's a creep.
He's a creep. He's arrogant. Yeah. He's a prick. And then we find out what he did.
To get his book, yeah.
So like he...
No wonder he's having trauma.
You're the ultimate villain. Yeah. Like, you are the ultimate villain. Yeah, you can say Linda's justified, but no, there can't be justification for what she does leading up to it. Why did she kill Suzanne? There's no need for that. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? You want revenge on Paul? Kill Paul.
Yeah, not his side chick.
Yeah, but she also takes way too long to do it. Like it's not like she's seducing him and then doing this kind of thing and stuff like that. Yeah. It's all like, I'm going to damage everything around you, then kill you. Odd.
Yeah. So there's some extra sort of bitterness behind that.
But it is brilliant. It is one of the best of the list. When we come to the eventual tier list, this is top rank stuff, 100%. It's Exposé. You've seen it. You're interested to see it now. We've talked it through. You know what to do. Let us know in the comments.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?